My name is Claire. I was 34 years old when my husband looked at me in our kitchen and said, "You've gotten fat." Not angry, not joking, not even cruel in the way people imagine cruelty. He said it the way someone comments on the weather. Neutral, observational, finished. I remember exactly what I was doing when he said it. I was standing barefoot on the cold tile, stirring a pot of soup I had made from scratch, because he once mentioned he was trying to eat cleaner. I was wearing an old gray t-shirt and black leggings, the kind women wear when they're trying not to be seen. My hair was tied up. No makeup. It was a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic. That mattered later. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult me directly. He just leaned against the counter, scrolled on his phone, and added, "I'm just being honest. You used to care more." That was it. No follow-up, no apology, no awareness that he had just shifted something permanent inside me. I turned the stove off slowly. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask him what he meant. I didn't defend myself. I didn't even look at him. I stared at my reflection in the microwave door instead, the warped version of me stretched across black glass, and felt a strange calm settle in. Not sadness, not rage, recognition. This wasn't about weight. This was about permission. For years, my husband had spoken to me like this in pieces. Comments slipped into conversations like crumbs. "That dress doesn't do you any favors. Are you really going to eat that? You were so confident when we first met." Each sentence small enough to ignore on its own. Together, they formed a pattern I kept trying not to see. I met him when I was 27. I weighed less then, yes. I also slept more, laughed louder, and hadn't spent years shrinking myself to fit into someone else's expectations. Back then, he loved to introduce me as my beautiful wife. Somewhere along the way, beautiful disappeared. Wife remained. Barely. After he said it, after the word fat settled between us like an object neither of us planned to move, I waited. I expected something. A laugh. A correction. Even irritation at my silence. Instead, he picked up his keys and said, "I'm meeting Jason for a drink." Like nothing had happened. The front door closed. The soup cooled on the stove. I stood there alone in the quiet kitchen, realizing something terrifying. The man I was married to no longer cared whether I was hurt. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror longer than usual. I didn't poke at my stomach or turn sideways like I used to. I just looked. 34. No children. No visible scars. A body that had carried stress, responsibility, and a marriage that demanded more than it gave back. I wasn't ashamed of what I saw. I was ashamed of how long I had allowed someone else to tell me what it meant. When he came home later, slightly buzzed, he didn't mention the comment. Neither did I. We brushed our teeth side by side. We slept on our respective edges of the bed. His back was turned to me, the space between us wide and intentional. I stared at the ceiling and replayed the moment again and again. Not the word itself, but the tone, the certainty. That was when the truth finally settled in, heavy and undeniable. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He was done trying not to. I understood then that this marriage wasn't cracking. It had already shifted, quietly, the way foundations do before the walls start to show it. The next morning, I stepped on the scale out of habit. The number blinked back at me. It wasn't shocking. It wasn't dramatic. It was just a number. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel panic. I felt clarity. If my husband believed my worth could be reduced to that number, if he felt entitled to say it out loud without fear, then the problem wasn't my body. It was the marriage I was standing inside, trying to make smaller so he could feel larger. That sentence in the kitchen didn't start the end. It revealed it. And although he didn't know it yet, That was the last moment he would ever feel comfortable in my presence again. After that night in the kitchen, life didn't explode. It shrank. The next morning, my husband acted normal. He drank his coffee, checked his phone, and asked if I had seen his blue tie. He didn't mention what he had said. Not once. And because I didn't bring it up either, it slid quietly into our daily life, like it belonged there. That was how it started. A comment here, a look there. Nothing loud enough to argue over. Just small moments that made me suddenly aware of my body, like it was something separate from me. If I reached for seconds at dinner, he didn't stop me. He just raised an eyebrow. If I tried on a dress and asked how it looked, he'd hesitate a second too long before saying, "It's fine." If I suggested taking a photo together, he'd say, "Let's do it later," and never circle back. I started noticing how he positioned himself around me. At parties, he stood half a step ahead, like we weren't arriving together. In group photos, he angled his shoulders away from me. When friends joked about married life, he laughed a little too hard and never looked in my direction. One night, we were getting ready to go out to dinner with friends. I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my dress, already uncomfortable. He walked past me, paused, and said, "You might want to bring a jacket." "It's warm outside," I said. "I know," he replied quickly. "Just trust me." I wore the jacket. At the restaurant, I understood why. He sat closer to the table than usual, his arm draped over the back of his chair instead of around me. When the server asked if we wanted dessert, he answered before I could speak. "We're good." On the drive home, I watched the streetlights blur past the window and realized something that made my chest tighten. I wasn't being loved less. I was being hidden. At home, the distance followed us into the bedroom. He turned off the light quickly. He faced the wall. His phone glowed in the dark until he fell asleep. I lay there beside him, wide awake, staring at the ceiling and wondering when my marriage had turned into something I had to endure instead of share. I started changing without talking about it. I ate lunch at my desk instead of coming home. I bought clothes that were loose and safe. I learned how to eat quietly, how to avoid comments, how to exist without drawing attention. He noticed, but not with concern. "You'd see results faster if you stuck to one plan," he said one night while I was cooking. "I just want you to be healthy," he added, not looking at me. Healthy didn't mean happy, it meant acceptable. One evening, while folding laundry, I picked up a pair of jeans I hadn't worn in months. I remembered buying them before we got married, standing in a fitting room, texting him photos, laughing. I pressed the denim between my hands and felt an ache that had nothing to do with size. I didn't miss my old body. I missed the version of me that wasn't constantly being evaluated. That was when the truth finally settled in, slow and heavy. No matter what I did, it wouldn't be enough. If I changed, he would say it took too long. If I didn't, he would say I didn't care. There was no outcome where he took responsibility for the way he treated me. Our marriage hadn't broken. It had quietly shifted into something where my job was to manage his comfort. And once I saw that clearly, I knew one thing for sure. Whatever came next wasn't about fixing us anymore. It was about what I was finally going to do for myself. I didn't find out about the affair in a dramatic way. There was no lipstick on a collar, no late-night confession, no phone lighting up with a message that said, "I miss you." I found out on a completely ordinary Thursday afternoon. I was sitting at our kitchen table with my laptop open, paying bills. He had asked me earlier to print a receipt from his email for a work expense. "It should be near the top," he said casually, already grabbing his keys. "I'm running late." His email was still logged in. That wasn't unusual. We had shared passwords for years. At least, I thought we had. I typed in the search bar and the receipt popped up right away. But just below it was another subject line that didn't belong there. "Last night was amazing. I stared at the screen longer than I want to admit. Not because I didn't understand what it meant, but because a part of me still wanted to believe there was an explanation, a work thing, a joke, something harmless. I clicked it. It wasn't explicit. That almost made it worse. Short messages, familiar tone, the kind of comfort you only have with someone you don't need to impress. I wish you didn't have to leave so early. Next time, let's stay longer. I still smell your cologne. My hands went cold. I scrolled back. Weeks of messages. Gaps that lined up perfectly with the nights he came home late. The weekends he said he was helping a friend. The sudden interest in his appearance that I had blamed on my own insecurity. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I felt something click into place. So this was it. When he came home that evening, I didn't say anything right away. I watched him instead. The way he loosened his tie. The way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. The way he kissed my cheek without meeting my eyes. We ate dinner quietly. Halfway through, he glanced at my plate and said, "You barely touched your food." I looked up at him then. Really looked. And for the first time, I wasn't wondering what he thought of me. I was wondering how long he had been lying to my face. After dinner, I followed him into the living room. My heart was steady. That surprised me. "I saw your email today," I said. He froze for half a second. Just long enough. "What email?" he asked, already defensive. "The one about last night being amazing." He sighed and sat down like I had just asked him about taking out the trash. "Why were you in my email? You asked me to print something." He rubbed his face and leaned back. "It's not what you think." I waited. I didn't rush him. I wanted to hear how he planned to explain this. "It just happened," he said finally. "I didn't plan it. We've been distant, and she listened. That's all." "That's all," I repeated. He nodded. "I didn't want to hurt you." I laughed once. A short, sharp sound that surprised both of us. "You called me fat. You stopped touching me. You made me feel invisible. And now you're worried about hurting me?" He frowned. "You're twisting things." "No," I said calmly. "I'm seeing them clearly." He stood up then, pacing. "Look, you haven't exactly been trying either. You let yourself go. You pulled away. What was I supposed to do?" There it was. Not guilt, not shame, just justification. In that moment, something inside me went completely quiet. The part of me that used to argue, the part that explained, defended, apologized, it was gone. I realized I had been carrying the weight of this marriage alone, and now he was trying to hand me the blame for his betrayal too. "I'm not fighting for this," I said. He stopped pacing and stared at me. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done explaining myself to someone who already decided I wasn't worth respecting." He scoffed. "So you're just going to give up?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I'm finally letting go." He looked confused then. Truly confused. Like he had expected tears. Begging. Promises to change. Instead, I went to the bedroom and closed the door. That night, I lay in bed and listened to him moving around the house, making calls, pacing, pretending everything was under control. I stared at the ceiling and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't too sensitive. I wasn't imagining things. The comments, the distance, the shame, the affair. They were all connected. And for the first time in a long time, the story made sense. I didn't fall asleep right away. I made a quiet decision instead. I wasn't going to compete with another woman. I wasn't going to beg for loyalty. I wasn't going to change myself to earn basic respect. Whatever happened next, it wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be dramatic. But it would be final. The morning after I confronted him, I woke up before my alarm. The house was quiet in that dull, early way where everything feels paused. I lay there for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the familiar rush of panic to hit me. It didn't. Instead, I felt clear. Not calm, not hopeful, just clear. He was already awake. I could hear him in the kitchen, moving things around louder than necessary, like noise might pull me back into the role I'd always played. When I walked in, he glanced up, studied my face, and frowned. "You look fine," he said. "I am," I replied. He poured coffee and slid a mug toward me without asking how I wanted it. That small detail used to annoy me. That morning, it felt symbolic. He still assumed. He still didn't ask. "So," he said, leaning against the counter. "What happens now?" I took a sip of coffee. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I know what's not happening." He waited. "I'm not fixing myself for you anymore," I continued. "I'm not shrinking. I'm not apologizing for things you chose to do." He sighed like I was being unreasonable. "You're acting like I ruined your life." "No," I said. "You just showed me where I stand in it." That seemed to irritate him more than anger would have. "You're being dramatic." I looked at him for a long moment. The word didn't land the way it used to. It felt old, predictable, powerless. "I'm being done," I said. That was the moment his confidence cracked. He started talking fast then. About stress. About how work had been hard. About how we'd both changed. About how marriage wasn't easy and people made mistakes. He said all the things men say when they feel control slipping, but don't want to admit they caused it. I listened. I really did. Not because I was considering staying, but because I wanted to be sure. By the time he finished, I knew. That afternoon, I didn't go to the gym. I didn't cry in my car. I didn't make a list of everything wrong with me. I did something much quieter. I called a lawyer. I sat at my desk at work, phone pressed to my ear, and spoke in a low voice while emails popped up on my screen, like nothing in my life was changing. I asked questions. I took notes. I didn't tell a dramatic story. I stuck to facts: length of marriage, assets, infidelity. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, but it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline. I had just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. That night, I didn't cook dinner. I made myself a plate of whatever I wanted and ate it slowly at the table. He hovered nearby, pretending not to watch me. "You didn't ask how my day was," he said eventually. "I didn't need to," I replied. "I already know how this works." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've spent years paying attention to how you feel," I said. "I'm done ignoring how I feel." Over the next few days, he tried different versions of himself. The charming one, the wounded one, the annoyed one. He cleaned the kitchen. He made comments about how good I looked. He suggested we start fresh. I watched it all with a strange sense of distance, like I was observing a character I already understood. One night, he reached for me in bed. Not gently, not kindly, just familiar. I moved his hand away. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I'm setting a boundary," I said. He rolled onto his back, frustrated. "You're really going to throw everything away over this?" I turned to face him. "You threw it away when you decided I wasn't worth honesty." That was the last real conversation we had as a couple. After that, we existed in the same space but not the same life. He started staying out more. I stopped asking where he went. I began taking walks after work. Not to lose weight, but to breathe without being observed. One evening, I caught my reflection in a store window while walking downtown. I looked different. Not thinner, not styled, just present. Shoulders back, eyes forward. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't performing. I wasn't waiting to be evaluated. I realized then that the transformation everyone talks about doesn't start with a gym membership or a new diet. It starts the moment you stop begging someone to treat you well. That was the day I stopped trying to save the marriage. And without realizing it yet, I had already begun dismantling the version of his life where I stayed quiet and made things easier for him. I didn't announce that I was changing. I didn't post before and after photos. I didn't warn him that something was shifting. That was the part he never understood. This wasn't a performance. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even about him anymore. It started quietly. I began waking up earlier, not to punish my body, but to give myself time before the day started asking things from me. I drank my coffee slowly instead of gulping it down while checking emails. I went on walks without headphones, just letting my thoughts settle instead of drowning them out. When I did start exercising, it wasn't dramatic. No extreme routines, no sudden obsession, just movement that made me feel present in my own skin again. I chose food that made me feel steady instead of ashamed. I slept. I said no to things that drained me. I said yes to things that didn't require explanation. And the strangest part? I stopped watching myself through his eyes. For years, every choice I made had passed through an invisible filter. Will this bother him? Will he comment on this? Will this make things easier? Once that filter disappeared, my life felt lighter almost immediately. He noticed the changes, of course. He always did. At first, he assumed it was for him. "You seem more motivated lately," he said one morning, watching me tie my shoes. "That's good," he added, like he was approving a decision he had influenced. I didn't correct him. Then came the compliments. Careful ones at first. "You look good today. That color works for you." He started lingering when I walked into a room. He touched my arm when he passed me in the hallway, like muscle memory kicking back in. I let it happen without responding. That confused him more than anger ever could. As weeks passed, my body did change. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily. Clothes fit differently. My posture changed. My face looked less tired. People at work commented, not on my weight, but on my energy. "You seem lighter," one coworker said. And she was right, just not in the way people assume. At home, the shift in power became obvious. He started asking where I was going. He started checking his phone more when I wasn't around. He started acting like I might disappear at any moment. One night, while I was getting ready to leave for dinner with a friend, he stood in the doorway watching me. "You've been going out a lot?" he said casually. "With friends," I replied, adjusting my jacket. He nodded slowly. "You never used to." "I used to be busy trying to make you comfortable," I said, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "I have more time now." That was the first time I saw something like fear cross his face. Not because he loved me, but because he felt himself losing control. The more grounded I became, the more restless he grew. He started picking fights over small things. He accused me of being distant. He asked questions that weren't really questions at all. "Is there someone else? You think you're better than me now? Where is this all coming from?" I didn't answer the way he wanted. "It's coming from me," I said once. Finally, behind the scenes, I was still being practical. I met with my lawyer again. I organized documents. I separated finances quietly, carefully. I didn't rush. I didn't threaten. I let him stay comfortable in the belief that things might still go back to normal. That was his mistake. One evening, we ran into one of his coworkers at the grocery store. She smiled at me and said, "I've heard so much about you. He talks about you all the time." He stiffened. I smiled back politely. "That's interesting." On the drive home, he was silent. Later that night, he asked, "What did you mean by that?" "Nothing," I said. "Just interesting." He didn't sleep much after that. The truth was, my transformation wasn't about proving him wrong. It wasn't about becoming someone he suddenly wanted again. It was about becoming someone who no longer needed his approval to exist comfortably. And that terrified him, because when a woman stops reacting, stops explaining, stops seeking permission, she becomes unpredictable, not loud, not dramatic, just unreachable. By the time he realized that my changes weren't for him, that they weren't even about the marriage, it was already too late. I had rebuilt myself quietly, piece by piece, while he was still standing in the same place, assuming I'd circle back. He never saw it coming because he thought the only version of me that mattered was the one that stayed. By the time I filed for divorce, he thought we were in a rough patch. That's what he told people. That's what he told himself. He didn't see it coming because I didn't threaten him. I didn't cry. I didn't give ultimatums or dramatic speeches about betrayal. I moved quietly, deliberately, the way you do when you already know the outcome and don't need permission anymore. The day I told him, it was raining. I remember that because he commented on it, standing by the window, annoyed that his commute would be slower. I waited until he finished talking before I said it. I'm filing for divorce. He turned slowly, like he hadn't heard me correctly. What? I've already spoken to a lawyer, I continued. The paperwork will be filed this week. For a moment, he just stared at me. Then he laughed. Not because it was funny, but because he thought it was impossible. You're serious? He asked. Yes. That was when panic finally replaced confidence. He started talking fast, asking questions that didn't matter anymore. Why now? Why are you doing this? You didn't even try to fix things. I didn't argue. I didn't list his comments. I didn't bring up the affair. I didn't need to. The truth was already documented. Quietly, thoroughly. When he realized I wasn't backing down, he got angry. You think you're so different now, he snapped. You think you're better than me. I looked at him and said something I had practiced in my head but never thought I'd say out loud. I don't think about you the way you think I do. That sentence hurt him more than any accusation ever could. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It happened in layers. First, the story he told people didn't hold up. Friends started asking questions. Coworkers noticed changes. His affair partner disappeared the moment it became inconvenient, leaving him with explanations he wasn't prepared to give. Then the legal reality set in. The evidence mattered. The timelines mattered. The financial records mattered. He lost leverage he assumed he had. Conversations with his lawyer stopped sounding confident. His tone changed. He stopped talking about winning and started talking about damage control. At work, things shifted too. He had always relied on a certain image, stable, respectable, the married guy who had everything under control. When that image cracked, people looked closer. Whispers followed him into meetings. Invitations stopped coming as easily. His name didn't carry the same weight it used to. None of that was my doing. I just stopped protecting him. At home, the house felt different. Smaller. Louder. He paced. He slept poorly. He checked his phone constantly. He asked questions he didn't actually want answers to. Are you seeing someone? No. Are people talking about me? I don't know. You're enjoying this, he accused one night. I shook my head. I'm enjoying not being blamed anymore. That was when his peace finally left him. He couldn't control the narrative. He couldn't control my reactions. He couldn't predict what I would do next. The woman he had dismissed, corrected, and cheated on was suddenly unreachable. And it haunted him. I moved out quietly a few weeks later. No dramatic exit. Just boxes, labeled and organized. I took what was mine and left the rest behind. When I closed the door for the last time, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. He tried one last time to pull me back. A long message. Apologies layered with excuses. Promises mixed with guilt. He said he missed me. He said he didn't recognize himself anymore. He said he was finally ready to change. I didn't respond. Because the truth was simple and unmovable. The transformation he noticed too late didn't cost him his marriage. His choices did. All I did was stop absorbing the damage quietly. By the time the divorce was finalized, his reputation had changed. His routine had collapsed, and his nights were filled with the kind of silence he used to hand me without thinking. Meanwhile, I slept peacefully for the first time in years, not because I had won, but because I no longer needed to prove anything to anyone who had already shown me who they were. The divorce didn't end with a dramatic courtroom scene. No slammed doors, no shouting, no final speech. It ended on a quiet Tuesday afternoon with a stack of papers, a few signatures, and a polite nod from two lawyers who had seen this story before. When it was over, I walked out of the building alone, sat in my car, and let the engine run for a moment before driving away. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I thought I would feel something big. Relief, sadness, victory, grief. Instead, what settled over me was something smaller and steadier. Like a deep breath I had been holding for years without realizing it. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. I didn't wake up glowing. I didn't feel healed in some dramatic, inspirational way. What changed was simpler than that. The noise stopped. I ate when I was hungry without feeling watched. I wore clothes because I liked them, not because they hid me. I slept diagonally across the bed. I laughed more, not because I was happier all the time, but because no one was quietly measuring me anymore. Friends told me I seemed different, calmer, more grounded. They weren't wrong. Every now and then, his name came up. Mutual friends would mention seeing him, or I'd hear something in passing. He looked tired, they said, distracted, still angry, still telling the story his way. I didn't correct anyone. That was another kind of freedom, realizing I didn't need to control the narrative anymore. Once, months later, I ran into him at a coffee shop, completely by accident. He was standing in line when he turned and saw me. For a moment, he looked like he'd been punched in the chest. "Hey," he said. "Hi," I replied. We stood there awkwardly while the barista called out orders. He looked me up and down, not in the old critical way, but in a searching one, like he was trying to figure out what had changed. "You look good," he said finally. I smiled, polite but distant. "I feel good." He hesitated. "I've been meaning to reach out." "I know," I said gently. He stopped himself, then tried again. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. I believed him, and for the first time, it didn't matter. "I did," I said. He nodded slowly, like that answer hurt more than anger would have. We stood there for another second. Then my name was called. I picked up my coffee, wished him well, and walked away. I didn't look back. That was the moment I knew something important. Not about him, but about me. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand witnesses. Peace is waking up without dread. It's not flinching at comments. It's not needing to prove your worth to someone who once convinced you it was conditional. He lost his marriage. He lost his reputation. He lost the quiet comfort of knowing someone would always absorb his damage for him. What he never got back was his peace. Because peace doesn't return to people who refuse to take responsibility. It doesn't come back to those who confuse control with love and honesty with cruelty. As for me, I kept mine. Not because I transformed my body, not because I won anything, but because I finally stopped believing that love was supposed to hurt quietly. If there's one thing I know now, it's this. When someone tells you who they are through their actions, believe them the first time. Don't wait until they've broken you down enough that leaving feels like survival. I wasn't too sensitive. I wasn't letting myself go. I wasn't difficult to love. I was married to someone who needed me smaller so he could feel bigger. And the moment I stopped shrinking, everything changed. So if you're reading this and recognizing yourself somewhere between the comments, the silence, and the slow erosion of your confidence, remember this. You don't have to become someone else to be worthy of respect. You just have to stop staying where you're being diminished. That was the transformation he never expected. And it didn't cost me my peace. It gave it back to me.